Chapter 1. The Winged Intruder, an Unauthorized Arrival. Every evening, shortly before sunset, I inspect the garden. The family calls this Cleo's little walk, which is typical of humans. Give them responsibility for a territory, and they install decorative lights. Give the same responsibility to a cat, and they describe her work as little. My inspection begins at the terrace, continues along the lavender border, and concludes beneath the apple tree, where I review the day's disturbances. These usually include birds, insects, and Bruno, the neighbor's dog, whose head occasionally appears above the fence with the expression of someone surprised to discover that the world still exists. That evening, the garden was in acceptable condition. The stones retained the day's warmth. The roses had opened without becoming vulgar. A breeze moved through the grass, carrying the smell of lavender, dry earth, and Daniel's abandoned gardening gloves. I had just settled beside the flower bed when something floated past my nose. I did not move. Sudden movement encourages visitors. The object circled a white rose, rose into the golden light, then dropped toward the lavender with no respect for routes, borders, or basic aeronautical discipline. At first I assumed it was a flower that had lost its stem. This seemed unlikely but not impossible. Plants are poorly organized. Then the flower folded its petals together. Wings, I realized. A butterfly had entered my garden. It had no color, no identification, and no visible concern about trespassing. Its wings were orange and black, decorated with a confidence I usually associate with expensive cushions. It drifted from bloom to bloom as though the entire garden had been planted for its convenience. I followed at a measured distance. The butterfly moved in a manner that appeared both careless and exact. It climbed without effort, paused in midair, changed direction, and crossed the flower bed without stepping on anything. There was no crouching, no calculation, no gathering of the hind legs before a jump. Gravity seemed to regard it as a suggestion. This required attention. I have always considered paws superior to most natural equipment. They are quiet, elegant, and equipped with concealed instruments. Wings, by contrast, look fragile and cannot open cupboards. Yet the butterfly floated over the low fence. I stopped. The fence had long been a point of disagreement between myself and the household staff. Anna believed it marked the edge of the garden. I regarded it as a structure requiring further study. Whenever I approached it with professional interest, someone opened the back door and called my name in the tone humans use when imagining disaster. The butterfly crossed it without permission. Then, apparently changing its mind, it returned. I was still examining this injustice when Mia stepped onto the terrace. Holding her phone in front of her face. "Oh, look," she whispered. "It's beautiful." I turned toward her. I had been seated in excellent light for several minutes. The sunset had placed a warm outline around my ears. My tail was arranged with classical restraint. No announcement had been made. Mia moved closer to the flowers and began taking photographs. The butterfly continued its erratic performance, encouraged by attention it had done nothing to earn. "Stay still," Mia said. The butterfly did not. She laughed and followed it across the lawn. This was troubling. When I refused to stay still for a photograph, I am called uncooperative. When a butterfly does it, the result is described as magical. I sat taller. Mia finally noticed me. "Cleo, don't eat it." The accusation was outrageous. I had not yet completed my investigation. The butterfly landed on a lavender stem, barely 2 tail lengths away. Its wings opened and closed slowly, catching the last of the sunlight. Up close, it was thinner than I had expected, almost insubstantial. A pair of wings with a small creature attached as an afterthought. Still, it could fly. It could rise above fences, avoid closed doors, and land wherever it pleased. Nobody checked its paws before allowing it onto the sofa. Nobody called it inside because evening air was getting chilly. Nobody interrupted its work to lift it under the front legs and kiss the top of its head. For the first time in my life, I encountered a thought so unreasonable that I could not dismiss it. What if nature had given the butterfly an advantage? The idea was offensive. It was also impossible to ignore. The butterfly lifted from the lavender and sailed over me, silent and weightless. I watched until it became a dark flicker against the glowing sky. Judgment without evidence is prejudice, and I am nothing if not scientific. The intruder would be studied. Its privileges would be documented. Its weaknesses would be identified. And if wings truly offered a superior form of existence, I intended to know why cats had not received them. Chapter 2. A Scientific Study of Unnecessary Beauty. The Wing Advantage Theory. The following morning, I established an observation post beneath the lavender bush. It offered shade, concealment, and a clear view of the flower bed. It also contained a surprising number of bees, but serious research often requires sharing facilities with noisy colleagues. The butterfly arrived shortly after the sun reached the terrace. I recognized it by the orange and black pattern of its wings, though I could not rule out the possibility that butterflies employed a uniform. It landed on a rose, opened itself to the light, and began the day by doing absolutely nothing useful. I began my list. First, it was light. Second, it was colorful. Third, it could travel in any direction without consulting a door. Fourth, flowers welcomed it. This last point deserved particular attention. When I sit in a flower bed, Anna removes me on the grounds that I am flattening the petunias. When the butterfly lands on them, she calls the garden alive. The difference appeared to be based entirely on weight and public relations. There were other privileges. Nobody inspected the butterfly's paws before allowing it indoors. Nobody objected to its presence on tables, although it had certainly been outside. Nobody complained about orange dust on the furniture or suggested brushing it because summer made it shed terribly. By mid-morning, the evidence had become uncomfortable. Anna entered the garden, carrying a large book and a cup of coffee. She was dressed for gardening, which meant she wore old trousers and the expression of a person preparing to negotiate with soil. "There you are," she murmured when she saw the butterfly. I remained under the lavender. A skilled observer does not reveal herself merely because someone has finally noticed the correct part of the garden. Anna opened the book. The butterfly moved to another flower. Anna turned several pages, compared two pictures, narrowed her eyes, and walked closer. The butterfly moved again. "Painted lady?" she said. "No, maybe a small tortoiseshell." The butterfly showed no interest in the matter. This is a common weakness among humans. They cannot enjoy a thing until they have named it, categorized it, and discovered whether a special container should be purchased for it. Had the butterfly remained long enough, Anna would probably have made a list entitled Butterfly Requirements and asked Daniel to build something from untreated wood. It might be a comma, she decided. I looked at the butterfly. It did not resemble punctuation. It was too decorative and moved far too often. Anna consulted another page. Meanwhile, the subject of her research continued being itself, without assistance. Its beauty was becoming the most disturbing part of the investigation. I understand beauty. In my case, it is the result of discipline. Every morning, I wash my face, arrange my whiskers, clean each shoulder, and devote careful attention to regions humans discuss only at veterinary appointments. Maintaining excellence requires hours. The butterfly appeared fully decorated at birth. No grooming, no polishing, no removal of leaves from the tail after an undignified moment beneath a hedge. It simply unfolded its wings and received admiration. This seemed less like beauty than inherited wealth. Of course, admiration carries burdens. Beautiful creatures are constantly photographed, touched, and described in foolish voices. I know this from experience. Mia has interrupted naps because my paws looked too cute. And Ben once placed a paper crown on my head to make me more royal, an act both unnecessary and politically confused. Yet the butterfly enjoyed admiration at a safe distance. No one attempted to kiss its nose. I added another point to my list. Fifth, beauty without handling. Anna eventually closed her book. Whatever you are, you're lovely. The butterfly opened its wings as if this conclusion had been obvious from the beginning. I disliked it less for that. Still, the facts required organization. By the time Anna returned to the house, I had developed what I called the wing advantage theory. The theory was simple. Wings gave a creature access to height, escape, beauty, mobility, and admiration, while reducing the risk of unwanted cuddling. Paws offered balance, weapons, and the ability to wake humans by touching their faces at dawn, but they remained subject to gravity. For several minutes, I imagined myself with wings. They would need to be larger than the butterflies, naturally, and more tastefully colored, perhaps black with a silver edge. I would rise from the terrace, cross the fence, circle above Bruno, and return only when the household had become properly anxious. Mia would take photographs. Anna would call my name. Daniel would claim he had always suspected I could fly. The vision was magnificent. It was also incomplete. Observation could establish what wings appeared to do. It could not prove whether a cat might achieve the same result through concentration, technique, and superior confidence. A proper researcher eventually has to leave the lavender. I stepped into the sunlight and examined the garden chair. It would make an acceptable launch platform. Chapter 3: Experimental Flight and Other Misunderstandings. The Limits of Human Engineering. My first experiment was based on a reasonable assumption. Birds do not fly so much as jump with excessive confidence. The garden chair provided an ideal starting point. Its seat stood high enough to produce measurable results, but low enough to protect the dignity of the research team. I climbed onto it, positioned my paws at the edge, and focused on the terrace cushion below. Flight, I decided, required 3 things: balance, concentration, and a refusal to acknowledge gravity. I possessed all 3. I lowered myself into a crouch. My hind legs gathered beneath me. My tail made a final adjustment. Then I launched. For perhaps half a second, I was airborne. The experience was magnificent, though brief. The air moved beneath my stomach. The garden widened. I understood the butterfly. Then the cushion arrived. I landed perfectly except for one rear paw, which slipped between the cushion and the wooden frame. This caused a minor rotation of the body and an unnecessary involvement of the tail. I recovered at once. The experiment had not failed. It had produced a successful landing at an unexpectedly early stage. I repeated the test from the table. This required more preparation. I examined the distance, calculated the angle, and removed a dry leaf from the landing area. Scientists who ignore dry leaves become anecdotes. My second launch carried me farther. I reached the opposite chair, struck its cushion with my front paws, and allowed the rest of me to follow in a controlled collapse. Again, the landing was successful. The flight remained disappointingly short. I was considering whether altitude or winglessness was the greater problem when Ben appeared at the terrace door. He watched me climb back onto the table. "Cleo," he said slowly, "are you trying to fly?" There are moments when a human displays such unexpected intelligence that one must reconsider the species. I looked toward the butterfly, which was drifting above the roses. Ben followed my gaze. His face brightened. This was my first warning. I can help. It was also my last. He vanished into the house and returned with cardboard, tape, string, and several felt-tip pens. Ben believes these materials form the foundation of modern engineering. He spread them across the terrace and began cutting. I observed from a safe distance. The wings were large, uneven, and decorated with blue spirals, red lightning bolts, and something he claimed was gold. One was noticeably wider than the other. "That makes them aerodynamic," Ben explained. It did not. He attached the wings to a strip of cardboard and added loops of string. I should have left then. Instead, I remained. Curiosity has damaged more dignity than hunger ever could. Ben approached carefully. I permitted the fitting only because great pioneers have always suffered for knowledge. The string passed beneath my chest. The cardboard rested across my back. One wing pointed upward, the other attempted to enter my ear. "There," Ben said. "Perfect." Humans use this word when they have finished, not when they have succeeded. I took one step. The left wing struck a flower pot. I took another. The right wing caught the chair. Ben freed me and placed a cushion on the lawn. By then, Mia had arrived with her phone, followed by Anna, who was carrying a basket of washing. "Oh, Cleo," Mia said. "You look adorable." This was not the objective. "What is happening?" Anna asked. "Science," Ben replied. Anna nodded in the tired manner of someone who had expected a worse answer. Daniel came outside last and inspected the wings. "You'll need more lift." No one had asked him. I allowed this because removing the apparatus without claws would have required assistance, and because the butterfly had landed nearby. It opened and closed its wings with unbearable ease. I crouched. The cardboard creaked. Mia raised her phone. Anna said, "Don't make her jump." Daniel said, "Cats are built for jumping." Ben whispered, "You can do it." I could. That was never the question. I sprang from the chair. The wings produced no lift. They did, however, produce noise, resistance, and a sudden turn to the left. I descended into the lawn, rolled once, and emerged with a bent wing over my face. There was silence. Then Mia laughed. Anna rescued me while calling me "poor darling," which was inaccurate in both tone and content. Ben apologized and removed the prototype. Daniel suggested lighter cardboard. I rejected his entire engineering department with one look. The photographs circulated through the household before dinner. My official conclusion was clear. Human-made wings were decorative obstacles, and flight remained unavailable to cats through current technology. Still, as I watched the butterfly cross the fence without effort, another advantage occurred to me. It did not merely fly, it lived outside, permanently, without doors, rules, or anyone calling it in. If the sky could not yet be conquered, the great outdoors would have to be investigated. Chapter 4: The Myth of the Great Outdoors. Freedom without a roof. Until that afternoon, I had considered outdoor life a continuous summer holiday. The butterfly had no doors to wait beside, no vacuum cleaner approaching without diplomatic warning, and no appointments beginning with Anna placing the carrier in the hall and pretending nothing unusual was happening. Nobody removed it from a chair because Grandma needed to sit there. Nobody announced bedtime while the evening remained clearly unfinished. It simply lived outside. To test the advantages of permanent freedom, I began a full afternoon in the garden. I selected a position on the lawn, beyond the terrace shade, where I could experience nature without domestic interference. For the first 3 minutes, the arrangement was excellent. The grass smelled warm. Bees moved between the lavender. The butterfly floated above the flowers, apparently occupied with the serious business of having no schedule. Then the sun became unreasonable. Indoors, sunlight arrives through glass and can be escaped by moving half a body length across the sofa. Outdoors, it follows you. I relocated beneath the apple tree, where the ground was cooler but uneven. A root pressed against my ribs. Ants crossed near my front paws with the confidence of workers who had mistaken activity for authority. One approached my tail. I moved it aside. The ant changed direction and continued toward it. Freedom, I noted, involved insects with no understanding of personal space. A breeze entered the garden. At first it was pleasant. Then it strengthened and pushed my fur backward along one side, producing an appearance I would never have approved in a mirror. The butterfly rose sharply, was carried toward the fence, and returned in a series of corrections that looked less like dancing than negotiation. A dry leaf skittered across the grass and touched my back leg. I jumped. This was not fear. It was an automatic security response to unidentified vegetation. From the terrace, Mia lowered her phone just too late to photograph the incident. I regarded this as one of the day's few successes. By mid-afternoon, clouds had covered the sun. The garden lost its golden warmth, and the air acquired the damp smell that usually causes Anna to appear with concern about washing. She arrived at once. "Rain," she said, staring at the sky as if it had violated an agreement. A row of shirts hung beside the fence. Anna began pulling them down with the urgency of a person rescuing family members from a sinking ship. Daniel stepped outside and looked upward. "It'll pass in a minute." Daniel has great confidence in weather, despite weather having repeatedly declined his advice. A cold drop struck my nose. I looked at the butterfly. It had left the roses and dropped beneath the broad leaves near the flower bed. Its wings closed tightly above its back. For the first time, it did not appear weightless. It appeared small. Another drop landed between my ears. Then the rain began. Anna hurried toward the house with an armful of damp washing. Daniel remained on the terrace long enough to demonstrate his faith in the passing shower, then followed when water ran down his neck. I crossed the lawn at speed. This was not retreat. A responsible investigator must protect her notes, particularly when the notes are stored mentally and the mental storage is becoming wet. At the doorway, I stopped beneath the dry overhang. Rain darkened the stones and bent the lavender. The garden that had seemed limitless now offered remarkably few roofs. Water struck every surface. Wind shook the flowers. Beneath the leaves, the butterfly remained hidden. Behind me, the house was warm. The floor was dry. Somewhere in the kitchen, a cupboard opened, the distinctive sound of civilization functioning correctly. Anna reached down with a towel. "You're soaked, Cleo." I had received perhaps 12 drops, but I permitted drying in the interests of temperature management. She rubbed my back, then carried me inside, where no wind could rearrange me and no leaf could launch an attack. From the windowsill, I watched the shower move across the garden. Daniel had been right that it passed quickly, though this did not improve his methods. When the light returned, the butterfly emerged and opened its wings toward the weak sun. Its freedom was real. So was its exposure. I revised the wing advantage theory accordingly. Unrestricted outdoor access eliminated doors, but also walls, central heating, towels, and staff assigned to worry about you. Still, one question remained. The butterfly lived outside, yet it carried no bowl, hunted nothing visible, and never appeared late for dinner. If freedom required eating flowers, the investigation was about to become considerably more serious. Chapter 5. The Nectar Scandal. Dinner without a bowl. Daniel began preparing dinner outdoors with the solemnity of a man returning to his ancestral wilderness. He carried metal tools, arranged charcoal, inspected the grill twice, and announced that fire required patience. This was an ambitious claim from someone who had spent 10 minutes searching for matches while holding them. Smoke rose across the terrace. Daniel stood before it with narrowed eyes and a long pair of tongs. According to him, grilling was instinctive. According to Anna, he had watched 3 instructional videos and printed a temperature chart. I settled beneath the table to supervise. The evening meal included fish, which made the operation relevant to me. Daniel had also prepared vegetables, though I assumed these were decorative warnings placed around the important food. Beyond the terrace, the butterfly moved quietly among the flowers. It landed on the lavender, unrolled a narrow tube from its face, and lowered it into a bloom. I stared. Nature had provided the creature with a drinking straw attached to its head. This was ingenious in the same way that hiding a spoon in one's nose might be ingenious. Efficient, perhaps, but difficult to respect. The butterfly remained on the flower for several seconds before moving to the next. Then another. Its entire meal appeared to consist of flying from one tiny portion to another and extracting invisible liquid. I began a nutritional assessment. A proper meal has texture. It has scent, substance, and ceremony. Ideally, it arrives in a clean bowl after the correct cupboard has been opened. There should be enough to inspect from several angles before eating, followed by the option to walk away and request something different. Nectar offered none of these advantages. There was no crunch, no satisfying resistance, and no visible portion large enough to justify the journey. Worse, Each mouthful required locating a new flower. If I had to visit 12 bowls in different parts of the garden to complete breakfast, the household would receive a formal complaint. The butterfly, however, seemed content. It drank, lifted into the warm air, and continued to the roses without once demanding service. This was either freedom or a tragic absence of standards. At the table, Mia arranged her plate beneath the last of the evening light. Daniel had just placed a piece of grilled fish before her, still steaming. "Don't eat yet," she said. Everyone stopped. Mia raised her phone and photographed the plate. "I have observed this ritual before. Humans allow warm food to become cold so they can show it to people who are not present. These distant people then indicate approval by touching small symbols on their own devices. No food is exchanged. Nobody becomes less hungry." Mia moved a lemon slice 2 centimeters to the left and took another photograph. Daniel watched his fish cool with visible pain. "Can we eat now?" 1 second. The butterfly had already visited 3 more flowers. For the first time, its feeding habits appeared almost sensible. It did not require plates, cutlery, fire, printed charts, or photographic evidence. It found food and consumed it immediately. A principle humans understood only when standing in front of an open refrigerator after midnight. Ben noticed where I was looking. "Do butterflies eat flowers?" he asked. "They drink nectar," Anna said. "It's sweet." Ben considered this, then picked a lavender stem and crouched beside me. "Cleo, do you want to try?" He held the flower beneath my nose. I leaned back. The offer was unacceptable on medical, philosophical, and culinary grounds. "Maybe she'll like it," Mia said, still holding her phone. I gave her a look intended to prevent documentation. It smelled pleasant. But pleasant smells are not necessarily food. Daniel's gardening gloves smelled interesting, and no one had suggested serving them with lemon. I turned my head away. "Cats don't drink nectar," Anna said. At last, a qualified voice. Ben lowered the flower. "She could if she wanted." This was true and improved his position considerably. Daniel placed a small piece of fish in my bowl. He described it as just a taste, although I regarded it as the beginning of negotiations. The fish was warm, tender, and delivered without my having crossed the lawn once. I ate it. Then I looked toward the butterfly, which was still working its way through the flower bed, one mouthful at a time. Its meal was free, but not effortless. The garden provided food only in tiny quantities, scattered across a wide area, and subject to rain, wind, and competition from bees. No cupboards stored emergency nectar. No human noticed when supplies were low. No one washed a butterfly's bowl, because a butterfly had no bowl. I had previously regarded bowls as limitations, fixed places where food appeared according to a schedule designed by others. Now I understood their deeper significance. A filled bowl was not evidence of dependence. It was evidence that an entire species had been successfully trained to provide dinner. I finished the fish and sat beside the empty dish until Daniel noticed. "You've had some," he said. I continued sitting. He sighed and added another piece. The butterfly could keep its wings, its flowers, and its elegant facial equipment. Reliable meals represented a form of freedom too, the freedom from wondering whether dinner existed. Only one question remained unresolved, whether dependence and freedom could occupy the same life. For that, I would need to consult the least independent creature I knew. Chapter 6. Bruno's Philosophy of Freedom. A lead, a hedge, and an uncomfortable truth. Bruno arrived at the garden fence in a state of uncontrolled happiness. His head appeared above the lower panel, followed by 2 paws and a tongue that seemed to have escaped his mouth. He was panting heavily. A blue lead trailed behind him, attached at the other end to Mr. Harris, who was attempting to unlock the neighboring gate while carrying a bag of something Bruno had recently produced. Dogs have a remarkable ability to turn humiliation into celebration. "Walk," Bruno announced. He communicates mainly through barking, breathing, and violent movement of the tail. but his meaning is rarely complex. I gathered that, I said. We went everywhere. You are attached to a rope. Bruno looked over his shoulder as if noticing the lead for the first time. Yes, that generally prevents going everywhere. He considered this. Thinking causes a visible stillness in Bruno, much like a household appliance losing power. But we went to the park, where your human took you, and the pond, where your human took you, and a hedge. I waited. We smelled it twice. Bruno's tail struck the fence with such force that a sparrow left the apple tree. I approached, maintaining sufficient distance from the gap beneath the gate. Bruno believes noses are a form of greeting and applies his with unnecessary enthusiasm. I am conducting research into freedom, I told him. You have outdoor experience and almost no independence, which makes you a useful control subject. Thank you. It had not been praise, but correcting Bruno's optimism is like trying to flatten water. What, I asked, is the principal advantage of being outside? Wind. Wind damages the arrangement of the fur. Mud. Mud is what happens when the ground fails. Strangers. Unverified humans. Sticks. Discarded pieces of tree. Bruno stared at me, deeply concerned. You don't like sticks? I respect trees while they are standing. He lowered his front half and raised his rear, overcome by the memory of timber. Mr. Harris threw one, and I brought it back. Why? So he could throw it again. This confirmed one of my longest-held suspicions. Obedience can become a closed system. Bruno continued his report. There had been a puddle, a bicycle, 2 pigeons, and a paper bag that moved unexpectedly. He had also spent several minutes smelling the same hedge from different directions. What changed? I asked. Everything. It was the same hedge, not from the other side. I disliked the answer because it contained more intelligence than Bruno usually permits himself. Mr. Harris finally opened the gate, but Bruno remained at the fence, shining with satisfaction. His paws were dirty. A leaf clung to his collar. His lead had wrapped once around his front leg. By every reasonable standard, he had spent the afternoon restrained, directed, and required to return home on command. Yet he looked entirely free. Suppose, I said, you could go outside without the lead, anywhere you wished. Would that be better? Bruno thought again. Would Mr. Harris come? No. Then who would throw the stick? You could keep it. His ears lifted. Forever? If you insist. The possibility disturbed him. A stick without someone to throw it was apparently not a possession, but a responsibility. And who would say, "Good boy," he asked. I looked toward Mr. Harris, who was now calling Bruno while holding the gate open. I assume no one. Bruno sat down. Then I don't want to go everywhere. His answer was appalling. Freedom, as I understood it, meant the removal of restrictions. Open doors, unguarded fences, unrestricted access to cupboards. Bruno defined it as being led through mud by someone who controlled both the root and the biscuits. You confuse freedom with enjoyment, I said. Maybe. And obedience with adventure. It was a very good hedge. I turned toward the flower bed. The butterfly drifted above the lavender, untouched by leads, gates, or human instructions. It could leave whenever it wished. For several days this had seemed like the purest form of privilege. Bruno followed my gaze. Pretty, he said. Would you like to be one? A butterfly? You could fly. You would not need a lead. He watched it rise above the roses. No. Why not? I'm Bruno. He said this with complete confidence, as though it settled every question worth asking. You admire butterflies? Yes. But you do not want wings? I like my ears. His ears were unequal, frequently damp, and incapable of flight. Nevertheless, Bruno wore them without regret. He stood as Mr. Harris called again. I like butterflies, Bruno said, and cats, and birds, and the delivery driver. You chase the delivery driver. I like him very fast. Then he dropped to all 4 paws and raced toward the gate, dragging the lead behind him. I remained by the fence. Bruno never wasted time imagining a life in which he was lighter, more elegant, or permitted to sleep on flowers. He admired other creatures without treating their advantages as evidence of his own deficiency. This was either profound wisdom or a side effect of limited concentration. I preferred the second explanation. That evening, however, when the butterfly settled beneath a leaf and folded its bright wings against the dark, I found myself watching it differently. For the first time, I wondered not where it could go. Chapter 7. Where does a butterfly sleep? The luxury of refusing a bed. I have never considered sleep a problem. Sleep is one of the areas in which cats have achieved complete mastery. We can begin without preparation, continue through noise, and wake instantly when a cupboard opens 3 rooms away. Humans require darkness, pillows, blankets, silence, water beside the bed, and several hours of complaining that they should have gone to bed earlier. The butterfly, however, appeared to have no arrangements at all. At dusk, it drifted lower through the garden. Its movements had lost their daytime confidence. It landed on a rose, left again, circled the lavender, and finally disappeared beneath a broad leaf near the fence. I approached quietly. The butterfly clung to the underside of the leaf with its wings folded above its back. It had selected no cushion. There was no blanket, no roof, and no human nearby to adjust the temperature. A breeze moved the leaf, taking the sleeping creature with it. This was not a bedroom. It was vegetation. I inspected the surrounding area for evidence of better facilities. There were none. The ground was damp from the earlier shower. Spiders had installed webs without regard for planning permission. Ants continued working late, either from ambition or poor management. Somewhere beyond the fence, Bruno barked at an event that had almost certainly already ended. The butterfly remained still. Perhaps it did not know what it was missing. My own sleeping arrangements are extensive. There is the sofa, which provides warmth and an excellent view of anyone entering the kitchen. Anna's clean laundry offers softness combined with the satisfaction of making myself immediately relevant to household organization. Mia's pillow is suitable when she has arranged her hair across most of it. Daniel's chair retains heat and the faint smell of grilled food. Ben's beanbag changes shape beneath me, creating the impression that furniture is making an effort. There is also my cat bed. It is expensive, padded, and located in a quiet corner specifically chosen for my comfort. I refuse to use it on principle. A bed assigned by humans is not a bed. It is an instruction. True luxury lies not in having one place to sleep, but in possessing many places and rejecting most of them according to mood. The butterfly had no such freedom. If the leaf became cold, it could not move to the sofa. If the wind changed, nobody would close a window. If it woke uncomfortable, there was no second sleeping location available, merely because the first had become emotionally unsuitable. I sat beneath the plant and watched the leaf tremble. Until then, I had viewed the butterfly as a collection of advantages: wings, beauty, height, flowers, escape. I had not considered the small body carrying them. In daylight, its fragility looked like elegance. In the fading light, it looked like risk. "Cleo," Anna stood at the terrace door. "Come inside, it's getting cold." I glanced back at the butterfly. No one called for it. Anna called me again, this time in the voice suggesting that she might come and collect me personally. Ordinarily, I delay long enough to establish that returning indoors is my decision. That evening, I remained where I was for another moment, for a different reason. The butterfly was beautiful and free. It was also alone beneath a leaf. This realization produced an unfamiliar discomfort. It was not worry. Worry is an undisciplined emotion involving pacing and unnecessary sounds. I was merely acknowledging a weakness in the local ecosystem. I returned to the house. Anna lifted me before I could object and pressed her face into my fur. "There you are." I permitted this with unusual patience. Later, I chose Mia's bed, abandoned it for Daniel's chair, and finished the night on Anna's folded towels. Each time I moved, I thought of the leaf shifting in the darkness. By morning, clouds had gathered beyond the rooftops. The air smelled of rain, and the garden had begun to hold its breath. Chapter 8. The Storm Committee. Many plans and one closed window. By late afternoon, the sky had abandoned subtlety. Dark clouds crowded above the rooftops. The leaves turned their pale undersides toward the wind, and the lavender bent in restless waves. Even the birds had left the garden, which should have alerted the humans. Birds are unreliable neighbors, but excellent weather instruments. Anna stepped onto the terrace and looked upward. "Everyone, we need to bring things inside." This was the beginning of the storm committee. Daniel emerged from the garden room carrying a glass of water and the confidence of a man who had once read half an article about cloud formations. "It's still miles away." Thunder sounded beyond the houses. "Several miles," he added. Mia stood beside him, consulting her phone. "The app says there's only a 30% chance of rain." A large drop struck the screen. She wiped it away and refreshed the forecast. Ben ran toward the lawn, not to rescue the chair cushions, flower pots, or abandoned tools, but to retrieve his cardboard wings. They had remained near the shed since the flight experiment, apparently awaiting improvements in either engineering or physics. "The wings can't get wet," he cried. This was true. Their structural integrity had already been threatened by dry air. Anna began issuing instructions. "Daniel, take the cushions. Mia, bring in the washing. Ben, leave those ridiculous things and get the watering can." "Why the watering can?" Daniel asked. "So it doesn't fill with water." Daniel looked at the sky, then at the watering can, as if uncertain which one had misunderstood its purpose. The wind struck the garden. It came suddenly, flattening the grass and sending a paper napkin across the terrace. A flower pot rolled onto its side. Ben's cardboard wings opened, caught the gust, and dragged him 2 steps toward the roses. For the first time, his invention achieved lift. I was in the garden room, supervising from the dry side of the open door, when I saw the butterfly. It rose from beneath the hedge in a violent rush of orange and black. There was no dancing now, no elegant pause above the flowers. The wind seized it, turned it sideways, and drove it across the lawn. For one moment, it vanished against the dark sky. Then it was blown through the open door. The butterfly entered the garden room, struck the curtain, recovered, and flew toward the light. It reached the large window with enough speed to cross the garden. Glass stopped it. It fluttered upward, collided again, and dropped to the sill. Its wings beat rapidly against the invisible barrier. Something tightened beneath my ribs. This was not distress. It was an immediate professional objection to transparent walls. "The butterfly!" Mia shouted. Every member of the household entered at once. Humans are rarely more dangerous than when trying to help something small. "Don't touch its wings," Anna said. "I know," Daniel replied, already reaching for a tea towel. "What are you doing?" "Guiding it." "With laundry?" "It needs something soft." Mia raised her phone. "Are you filming this?" Anna asked. "In case we need to see what happened." We were all watching what was happening. Ben arrived wearing one cardboard wing and carrying the other. "I can show it the door." The butterfly struck the window again. I moved closer. Its movements had become frantic and uneven. Freedom remained visible on the other side of the glass. Wet grass, bending flowers, open air. The butterfly could see everything it needed, and understand none of what prevented it from reaching it. Anna opened the garden room door wider. "There, it can fly out." The butterfly continued beating against the closed window 3 feet away. Daniel waved the tea towel gently behind it. The butterfly panicked and flew into a lamp. "Stop waving that," Anna said. "I'm directing it." "You're frightening it." "Maybe turn off the lights," Mia suggested. "It's daytime," Daniel said. Ben lifted the cardboard wing. "What if I make wind?" "No," 3 humans said together. At last, a successful committee decision. The butterfly returned to the window and clung to the glass. Its wings opened and closed with visible effort. A drop of rain slid down the other side, directly beneath its feet. I examined the room. The open door was too far behind it. The storm pressed air through the entrance, moving curtains and confusing every scent. Beside the butterfly was a narrow window with a simple latch. If opened, it would provide a direct path to the garden. The solution was obvious. Naturally, no human had noticed it. Anna proposed finding a large jar. Daniel preferred a piece of paper. Mia searched online for safe butterfly rescue methods while standing beside an actual butterfly. Ben suggested constructing a tunnel. They discussed jars, towels, airflow, wing damage, and whether the insect might be in shock. I jumped onto the windowsill. "Cleo, no," Mia said sharply. "Don't eat it." I ignored her. The butterfly trembled against the glass, close enough for me to see the delicate edges of its wings. A week earlier, I might have crouched. I might have measured the distance and allowed instinct to make the final decision. Instead, I looked at the latch. Then, I looked at Anna. She continued discussing jars. Humans often require several demonstrations before reaching the first correct conclusion. I raised one paw and tapped the latch. Chapter 9. Operation Open Window. The strength not to pounce. I tapped the latch again. Anna stopped speaking. Her eyes moved from my paw to the window, then back to me. I held her gaze with the patience required when communicating with a species that considers itself advanced. "The window," she said, "at last." Daniel looked offended by the simplicity of the solution. I was about to suggest that. He had been holding a tea towel for 3 minutes. Anna stepped forward, but the butterfly was directly beside the latch. She moved slowly, one hand extended. Its wings beat against the glass. "Careful," Mia whispered, recording every moment she had been told not to record. I remained on the sill. The butterfly was less than a paw length away. I could feel the faint disturbance of air from its wings. Its scent was barely there. Flowers, rain, and something wild that did not belong to rooms. Anna reached over me and turned the latch. The window opened outward. Cold air rushed into the garden room. Rain tapped against the outer sill. Beyond the opening, the garden shone dark and wet beneath the storm clouds. The escape route was clear. The butterfly did not move. It clung to the glass beside the open space, too exhausted or confused to understand that the invisible wall had ended. "Why isn't it going?" Ben asked. "It needs a moment," Anna said. Ben had never considered a moment sufficient for anything. He lifted his cardboard wing. "I can help." He began to flap it. The first movement sent a gust across the sill. The butterfly lost its grip and dropped toward me. I stepped between them. One of Ben's cardboard edges struck my shoulder. I turned my head and gave him a look containing the full history of failed human invention. He lowered the wing. "Sorry." The butterfly landed beside my front paw. Everything became still. Behind me, the family stopped breathing with the theatrical unity humans usually reserve for sporting events and burnt dinners. Outside, rain whispered through the leaves. A low roll of thunder crossed the rooftops. The butterfly rested on the sill, its wings closed. One edge was damp. Its body looked even smaller than it had beneath the leaf. My paw could have covered it. The knowledge arrived before thought. The exact distance, the required movement, the swift downward strike. These calculations are older than gardens, windows, and families. A cat does not learn them. We inherit them from darkness. My muscles tightened. The butterfly opened its wings once. I remembered it crossing the fence as though boundaries were inventions for heavier creatures. I remembered the absurd elegance of its meals. The leaf moving in the night, and its frantic body striking glass while freedom waited inches away. Catching it would have been easy. That was precisely why I did not. I lowered my paw and sat back. I positioned myself between the butterfly and Ben, the tea towel, the phone, and every other form of assistance available in the room. Then I became completely still. Cats understand stillness better than humans. Stillness is not the absence of action. Sometimes it is the most disciplined action possible. The butterfly's wings opened again. Air from the window moved across them. It turned toward the garden. For one brief moment, its wing touched the fur above my paw. Then it rose. It passed through the open window, dipped beneath the rain, and vanished toward the shelter of the lavender. The room released its breath. Cleo saved it, Mia said softly. I knew she understood, Anna replied, stroking my back. Daniel put down the tea towel. Good thing we opened the window. Ben crouched beside me. You didn't even try to catch it. His voice held wonder rather than disappointment. Praise is easier to manage when one appears occupied. Mia showed me the video as though I had not been present. Anna called me clever. Daniel offered a small piece of chicken in recognition of my service to the ecosystem. I accepted it because refusing an official reward would have created administrative confusion. Outside, the rain began to weaken. Pale light appeared beneath the clouds, and water brightened every leaf. I watched the lavender for a flicker of orange and black. None appeared. That did not mean the butterfly was gone. It meant the garden was large again, and the window was open. My investigation was nearly complete. Chapter 10. The Considerable Advantages of Being Cleo. A Final Scientific Report. The next evening, the garden looked newly invented. Rainwater clung to the roses. The lawn shone beneath the lowering sun, and every leaf appeared to have been polished by someone unusually thorough. The air smelled of wet earth, lavender, and the faint smoke of Daniel attempting to dry the grill cover by placing it near the grill. I began my inspection at the terrace. The storm had displaced several petals, one cushion, and Daniel's confidence in weather forecasting. Otherwise, the territory remained secure. Near the flower bed, something orange lifted into the light. The butterfly settled on a white rose. It may have been the same butterfly. The markings looked familiar, though I could not be certain. Humans would have consulted books, enlarged photographs, and argued over wing patterns. I decided the distinction was less important than they would make it. Either the butterfly had returned, or another had arrived to continue the work. I sat beside the lavender and prepared my final report. The investigation had established several facts. Butterflies can fly. This is undeniably impressive. They cross fences, rise above obstacles, and travel without waiting beside doors while pretending they had no intention of going through them. They are light, elegant, and fully decorated without devoting half the morning to personal maintenance. Flowers welcome them. Humans admire them from a respectful distance. No one checks their paws, removes them from kitchen counters, or schedules them for vaccinations. These are considerable advantages. However, butterfly life also includes wind, rain, fragile wings, scattered meals, uncertain shelter, and a disturbing shortage of servants. A butterfly cannot summon dinner by sitting beside a bowl. It cannot move from one bed to another because the first has ceased to satisfy it. If it becomes trapped behind glass, an entire rescue committee may form without a single competent cat being present. The balance of evidence therefore remained favorable to my own species. Cats possess warmth, whiskers, night vision, concealed weapons, flexible sleeping schedules, and the ability to occupy the precise chair a human intends to use. We are independent enough to ignore instructions and sensible enough to return when dinner is served. More importantly, we are loved. Naturally, I had always known this. I simply had not previously classified it as an advantage. Love means someone notices when you are outside in the cold. It means doors open, bowls fill, and blankets acquire your shape. It means a family may misunderstand nearly everything you communicate and still continue trying. This can be inconvenient, particularly when affection involves lifting, kissing, or photographs taken before the fur has been arranged. The butterfly opened its wings to the sun. For several days, I had treated those wings as evidence that nature had favored another creature. Now they seemed to prove something else. The butterfly's gifts did not diminish mine. Its freedom belonged to the air. Mine included the choice to enter the house, leave it again, and keep several humans available to operate the door. Beauty, too, was not necessarily a competition. If it were, cats would probably win. But competition was not required. The butterfly lifted from the rose and circled above the lavender. I watched it cross the golden garden without crouching. There was no tightening of the muscles, no calculation of distance, no plan concealed beneath stillness. Only attention. It rose above the fence, turned once in the evening light, and disappeared beyond the apple tree. "Cleo," Anna called from the terrace. "Dinner." The word carried across the lawn with the authority of a filled bowl. I remained where I was for several seconds. This was not sentimentality. A responsible garden supervisor must complete her inspection, especially after severe weather and unauthorized aerial activity. Behind Anna, Mia held her phone but did not raise it. Ben was removing tape from the remains of his cardboard wings. Daniel stood at the table, explaining that the storm had behaved unpredictably. The sofa would be warm. Dinner would be waiting. Later, I could sleep on Anna's clean laundry and ignore the expensive bed provided for exactly that purpose. I gave the empty sky one final glance. Flying was impressive. Freedom had many forms, and some of them had wings. Mine had open doors, reliable meals, a warm house, and an entire family trained to call me home. I walked toward the terrace at an unhurried pace. There was no need to rush. Everything inside was waiting for me.